Salam. I hope I said that right. Um, Hello to everybody out there, all you CST listeners out there. Welcome once again to another World Cup edition of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. I'm not good at Persian, I'm not good at Farsi, but I hope that was a good enough greeting for all of our Iranian listeners out there. As Tyler Adams stressed today, through education, we can bridge cultures, we can understand each other better, and we can pronounce things a whole lot clearer. Hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. This is Jeff Tebbets, the host tonight, here with our World Cup Roundtable members. We have one of them rolling in a little later than usual, but that seems to be the norm lately. The U.S. men's national team, probably thankful to be still in the hunt after a 0-0 draw against powerhouse England. A draw won't do it this time around, though. It's win or go home in tomorrow's match against Iran. Let's hope they can bring home all 3 points, get themselves into the knockout round. But thanks for joining us. Before we call everybody together, let's remind ourselves that we've got a few sponsors helping us out. Share Cheese Bar at Coffee Exchange. They'll be helping us with special coverage for the World Cup. Make sure you go down there, order yourself a cheese plate, get yourself a cup of coffee. They'll put the game on for you during the day. Maybe you'll be able to watch the U.S. game there tomorrow. Go to sharecheesebar.com for your ordering needs. Also, the sponsor for our first half of the show is Apollo Home. Apollo is the next home service provider in Cincinnati. They pride themselves on awesome expert technicians and 7-day-a-week services. For all your home heating, cooling, electric, plumbing needs, reach out to Apollo. Visit apollohome.com to book a service. Give them a call. Speak with one of their super cool customer service team members. Let them know you listen to CST, and they'll give you a technician on site. They'll get there free. They'll waive the normal $79 service for any CST listener. Once again, go to apollohome.com. But enough about that. Let's get into the games and the game situation. With 2 down, drawn both of them. And yeah, nothing but 3 will do. Let's call in some of our special guests. You know them all from the past 2 or 3 weeks that we've done this. Let's first introduce Justin Blair. How you doing tonight, Justin?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Didn't loosen my belt buckle for anything over Thanksgiving. Feeling good, feeling comfortable. But how was your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, everything went pretty well. I think we're all getting a little bit of kind of like a little like cold or a little bug going around. So I got 2 young kids, so it's kind of the norm, par for the norm for us.
Yeah, everybody coughs around Thanksgiving. You just got to cover up, when you need to. And if you're feeling sick, once again, maybe distancing is the best way to do it. But hopefully everybody's also got their boosters. And we also have, hey, DJ, how you doing tonight?
I'm well, Jeff. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How was your Thanksgiving? Did you stay in state?
I did stay in state. In fact, I stayed in my house all Thanksgiving because my young kids brought home the flu before the holiday began, and it ran ragged for days on end and is still doing laps through the last of my children. So it was a pretty downtime Thanksgiving break for me, but that meant lots and lots of soccer to watch.
Yeah, for me, it meant lots and lots of bourbon the night before. But we managed to go and visit friends and family up in Columbus. Yeah, stayed overnight. So yeah, the wine that we served didn't force us to drive home impaired. And hey, perfect timing. Coming in right now, Adnan, how are you doing tonight? How was your Thanksgiving, dude?
Glad to be here. I'm pretty good, gotta say. Went to family friend for some turkey and stuffing, and went back the next day for leftovers.
Oh, they let you back in for leftovers.
Oh yeah, they make enough for a couple days.
Oh, that's incredible. I know I had probably the moistest turkey for the longest time. And frankly, that was one of the best birds I've had in a while. Maybe it was just not being at a traditional Thanksgiving dinner for a while, but it hit the spot. But good to see all 3 of you here. We know what we're here for, and we know how we're going to get through it. There's 1 game left at least, and we cannot fudge this up. But just to remind everybody, we had a 0-0 draw against England. Pretty strong, solid showing. I mean, they the possession battle was about the same. The shots actually favored the United States. Just a few blips on the radar that could have gone in if they weren't careful at the end of this game. But I just want to get your thoughts, maybe real quick, see if we can gauge the pulse from this past game. Once again, asking the best and the worst. What were the best and what was the worst that you saw out of this game? Let's go to Adnan. Let's bring you on first. What was your best and worst from this past game?
Gotta love that midfield, right? That was really, really an impressive thing. Like, I wouldn't say that midfield is England's exactly strongest position, but Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham are really good players. And we just bossed them. That was super, super impressive. The one thing for me that would be the negative would be, we got into the final third quite a lot. We got more than England did for sure, but we didn't have that final pass. We didn't have that last chance and that made the difference.
Yeah, definitely bringing up Bellingham in the middle and to some extent Mount. I think they even mentioned that I think Bellingham is going to actually be benched for this next game against Wales. Sort of, he was sort of the I guess the debutant in the game against Iran, and now he might not even be starting the next game.
I mean, it's incredible. He was great against Iran and then just completely pocketed between Yunus Musa and Tyler Adams. Really impressive stuff from the Americans.
Absolutely. Let's move it over to DJ. Let's give me your best and worst from this 0-0 draw against England.
Yeah, I was also super impressed with the midfield, and how are you not impressed by the performance that those two really put in? I'm going to go with Walker Zimmerman after having what a lot of people thought was a kind of a nightmare performance, and really it wasn't a nightmare performance. He had a couple bad moments in the first match against Wales, and obviously giving away that penalty. A lot of people pinned that result on him. And he came out and really kind of put Harry Kane in his pocket. And while Kane wasn't necessarily at his sharpest offensively, I think he's definitely still carrying a bit of a knock. Wasn't at full strength. I thought Zimmerman responded to that pressure and had probably one of his best games for the national team.
Okay. Do you see any major negatives that you can bring up? Any worsts?
I mean, the easy one, Adnan hinted at this as well. Up top was not exactly productive as far as chances in the final third. And I really have to question the decision to start Haji Wright. He really struggled to get himself involved in the match, didn't seem to have a good flow with the rest of the team. While there was a lot of creativity coming up to that final third, he didn't offer that link play that I'm sure Berhalter thought he was going to be able to do, a little bit of that back to goal work. And he just wasn't that player for us, and frankly struggled to really find much of an impression on the match at all.
Yeah, bringing up Wright, I almost forgot what his number was when I was looking at the passing network that MLSsoccer.com puts up. You would think that with someone who is meant to play the number 9, to play the striker, that he would be more productive. He would be more showing sort of the point of attack. He was behind the wingers the entire game. And the one time he got a shot, it really was not productive. Very low XG, but still a decent spot. But when he left and when Sargent came on, there really wasn't much production from that spot.
Mm-mm.
If anybody listening, if you'd like to give us your best and worst, hey, we're listening to you on our comment section as well. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. If you're listening to all three, hey, respond on all three. Yeah, over to you, Justin. What did you see as your best and worst?
Well, it looks like you guys marinated it, cooked it, and I'm not going to throw A1 on it after that. So I'll just go with the memes, the trash talking. That was the best part of that match against England. Memes afterward, the 0-0 draw win. I love that. Football, soccer debate. But yeah, just super impressive midfield. Tyler Adams was the ultimate safety valve. Kept finding those pockets in the defense and cutting off people. It was super impressive. And then McKinney on that turn, just absolutely threatening. It's kind of a 180 from the match before. Musa, calm, composed. It's a good match for our midfield. And again, the same exact thing for your worst. A lot of nerves I saw in the attacking. not what I wanted to see from our captain. Pulisic did not want to see some of those shots we're taking just playing hero ball. I think FC Cincinnati fans are familiar with some players that we've had in the past, but it's to be expected. It's a huge stage. Playing England, you saw the quality that they brought coming into the match. Trying to get that goal would just be a cement on U.S. soccer and the growth we've made. So my worst would be maybe just calm down a little bit.
Yeah. I think in general, this was an above average game. This was a game I think a lot of people, if you told them this would be a draw, they'd be ecstatic. But the fact that they drew against Wales is, I think, my worst right now. And it's probably unfair to compile the two and call it a worst, but the fact that they haven't in both of these games been able to keep that pace, that poise in the first half, roll it over into the second half and add on to a lead or establish a lead, that worries me quite a bit. That this is a team that is called upon to go 75 minutes before subs come on, and frankly, that just didn't feel like there was anything moving as the second half came by. And late in the second half, that's when I felt England had their best looks at the net. That U.S. were making their worst mistakes. That turnover to, I think, was Mount right there in the middle of the field around the 90th minute. This is a team that has to play a full 90 minutes, and they're struggling even with the subs coming on to find a full 90-minute performance. My best, I'm going to give it to Weston McKennie. He had, I think, a gear missing against Wales. He really needed to show up in this game to sort of prove to people that he's not injured, that he's still at least a 75-minute guy. And early on, he looked very solid. He was along the wings. He was really looking productive in performance. That the one shot that he had where he skied it, that was the only strike against him there, where he was wide open in the middle and just got under it, booted it over when he really needed to, I think, fire it instead of side foot it. But I think his performance, it really shows me that the midfield is still solid. The MMA formation there with Musa, with Adams, and with McKennie. But I mean, that being said, I think we all four of us can agree that the MVP of this game, the man of the match, had to be Adams. I mean, does anybody need to bring up anything? Why was Adams so productive out there against a strong English team?
I'll just look at his heat map. I mean, he was all over the place. He's a man on a mission. He was an ultimate disruptor. I mean, you could see it. England's offense really could not they were struggling to get the ball in the attacking third, and once they got the ball in the attacking third, playing in the middle, Adams was all over him. So he hats off, man. I wish I could pull up some stats here. A little bit short with stats on some of our sites here, but I imagine his tackle success rate is through the roof.
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I would just want to add, I think when you're talking about that heat map, you take a look at the heat map from the game against Wales, and they really centralized him, I think, at the midfield, that one side of the midfield. It was very vividly green, despite he had more touches. But you take a look at the heat map from this past game, and it's very evenly distributed. He was all over the place. Sorry, Adnan, go ahead.
One of the things, I think it was John Mueller. He went and posted, I think, one of those pass maps from FIFA, actually. And it's for England, actually. And the funny thing is, there's just this dent where at the top of the box, not the box, at the top of the half towards the circle, where it's just, there's no one there. And it's just this perfect size to put Adams' portrait in. And that's what he did. He just ate that space for England. I think Harry Kane actually had more touches in his own box than ours. That's Adams' doing.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at, once again, the heat maps. They look very similar to each other in terms of that massive void in the middle. you could say that Haji Wright and Sargent were empty, were invisible, but Harry Kane didn't have really his best performance at all. And that being said, also to some extent, Sterling. I mean, he was pretty quiet as well. I was kind of surprised that the English attack wasn't as strong as they did in the first game against Iran.
I do think it's probably worth pointing out that England definitely were being conservative in their play, right? Like this wasn't a team that was gunning for 3 points. I think they felt very comfortable after their opening win over Iran with a nice padding of goal difference and 3 points already in hand. They felt like, hey, a point against the US, if we can hold them, is probably something that they would be okay with. And it's not to say that there weren't moments where they were pushing and felt like they could get a goal. But this wasn't an England side that were all gears pointed towards converting and getting 3 points. And I think that benefited us to a certain extent. And I'm not trying to discredit our performance because I think it was excellent. And the 3 points were probably there for us more so than they were for England. But they were okay with the result because of, and they were fine with it before the kickoff even started.
Yeah, and we've got David Moore on Facebook, sort of giving us a little bit, saying England used up all their goals against Iran. I think while he's maybe being a little tongue in cheek about that, I have a feeling that England might have looked at the results from the 2-0 Wales loss to Iran and thought to themselves, hey, we don't have to give 100% out there as long as we don't lose. But I wonder if that game sort of had them take the foot off the gas a little bit.
One of the things that really struck me was that neither team had any yellow cards. I think part of it is just because, the USMNT is being a little cautious because they picked up so many in against Wales. But I think England, same thing, where they don't want to get any suspensions. They're playing a little cautiously. I still think though that if England had been a little bit more aggressive, the US would have gotten a goal or two. It's really hard to say that. Maybe it would have been a draw, 1-1 draw, but the U.S. had the better of the chances. The U.S. was better in defense. For me, it's really hard to go and look at it and say, well, if England had a different game plan, they would have won. I don't really buy that line of thinking. I was quite impressed with how the U.S. played.
One thing I don't really buy in terms of England being conservative, they didn't have any yellow cards against Iran. So they had nobody that was in trouble, that they would lose for game 3 if they had gotten a yellow card. Red card is one thing, but they hadn't, they could afford to be a little bit more aggressive. The U.S., of course, could not. At the same time, they did not give up any yellow cards. So it's all hands on deck against Iran. But it's a good thing to look at. I mean, that being said, do you feel that Berhalter equipped this team to be a little bit more aggressive at the end? Could they have been more aggressive at the end?
I think so. Yeah, I think we noted it on the previous show that the right winger could have been a little bit more aggressive and pushing up the side. We try too much to play our forwards out wide, and with that, they're just not getting appropriate angles on goals. I mean, they're so deadly in the box. If without having a true, I'm putting my stamp on it, 9 on this team. We need guys that can play in the center part, and we're not. I'm not seeing it. I would like somebody from the back. I know that Jedi has been doing a fabulous job on the left, but I would have really liked to seen us push play out of the right. I think, who was it that came on for Dest?
I think that was Shaq Moore.
Shaq Moore,
yeah. So that's he's a quality player in MLS. He'll give you quality minutes, but I mean, I would have liked to seen Yedlin come in, really push pace, especially with tired legs. So
yeah, I know this is all tongue in cheek once again, but there were a lot of it's the Nashville guys again. But I mean, it was an interesting pattern. Can we second guess though Berhalter's substitution pattern? I mean, who could we have played to maybe change this outcome a little bit?
I don't know that it would have necessarily been who we could have played differently. I think, obviously the guys who came in were all players. I probably would have, ultimately made those choices myself as well. But I think it's more when he's making these changes, and everyone can see that this team is getting lethargic 50 minutes in, roughly, right? That even halftime gives us like a little bit of a reprieve, and then they get beyond that. And you can see that tiredness. Weston, as great as he was, the opening 45, he was probably the best player on the pitch. But then in the second half, he really kind of fell off. He'd had sprints and starts where he would be okay. But we're looking at a point where Berhalter, especially as they get into the third match, if the game's in a bit of a stalemate, he's going to have to turn to that bench earlier, 5 subs to burn, to try to make an impact earlier in the match. Because waiting until the 75th, 80th minute before making a switch is just too late and leaving it too much to chance.
It's really odd for me. You go and you look at Berhalter's pass record, I guess with qualifying because those were competitive matches, but also how other coaches are using their sub patterns. And it's kind of striking just how much Berhalter really just wants his starting 11 out there. And even when we do get subs, you're seeing pretty consistently there's subs for McKennie and for Dest, players who are just coming off of injury. I would kind of like to see Reyna and Aronson get few more minutes. But I guess, you go and look at it, Berhalter's got his guys. That's who he trusts, and he keeps them out.
But I mean, once again, though, talking about substitution patterns, Berhalter waits for the other team to blink first. We saw that with Wales when they brought on Kiefer Moore, and he ate up the middle with their 3-man attack. He waited for England to bring in their substitutions. They brought on Grealish, they brought on Henderson before he made a move. And so it seems to me that Berhalter has this tendency to wait and see what the other team does. He doesn't want to be the one to blink first. Is that something that he perhaps should have been on the front foot and reestablished his team before England could? I mean, they were on the back foot quite a bit in the first. I don't see how you can't try to put them more on the back foot if things are starting to even out at the middle of the game.
I feel like when you go and you look at the subs, especially the top ones. So Gio Reyna, he offers a little bit something different than Tim Weah, or even slightly than Pulisic. And then you have different looks for striker. Aside from that, of the players you're going to pull out, I feel like they're mostly like for likes. And so I guess kind of getting that structure for the team. In this case, we had a 4-4-2, which turned out to be wonderful move on Berhalter's part. But it feels like the team's kind of just set up and they play, and whoever else is going to be coming on is a plug and play thing. So I don't know if Berhalter even really has too many clubs in his, clubs to pull out. And that kind of makes it weird for me. Like, he's not keeping his guys out there, with playing energetically.
I mean, I guess one of those clubs in his hand, one of those cards that he holds by his vest, was Gio Reyna, and he waited until the 83rd minute to bring him out. We've heard after the game a little bit in terms of was he injured? Was he not injured? We don't know. There was, the whole, rumor mill got moving after that. If you were in Berhalter's shoes, and they are nice shoes, would you have brought Gio in a little earlier?
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, I think Gio is one of those players that, I mean, he starts pretty much when he's healthy every minute on Dortmund, and in the run of play, he usually needs a little bit of rhythm and form. So bringing him on with with the stoppage time that we get in this World Cup, about 17 minutes left, I think that's interesting. I think I would have tried to get him in the 60th minute, see if he could really create some kind of opportunities. But again, I think for him, I would like to see him get his nerves out. I mean, him and Aronson, those two players are kind of fiery players, and just get them out there, give them minutes. But again, against England, you're kind of handcuffed. The opportunity would have been Wells for sure.
Maybe a question to DJ or Adnan. Could we judge just how well Gio was playing in this game?
I mean, it's a really limited sample size, 15 minutes at the end of that match, where England, when the Henderson sub rolled up, you're like, well, Southgate's clearly just going for this point. Like that wasn't a sub that you bring on and you feel confident about the guys pushing forward on it. Henderson's a lock it up. He's going to sit in. He's not going to run the lines for you. He's going to be a guy who's going to be a clog. So at that point, you kind of go, all right, well, you know what England are going to be doing now. Why not get him out there a little bit earlier? Give him a little bit more of a run. Let him loosen up, shake out any of that rust that may still be in there. I think it's clear that they're limiting his minutes, right? No minutes in the first match, limited game time in the second match. That screams injury, whether people want to believe it or not. That is a plan that they're trying to execute. And maybe they're building him towards a larger performance in this third match, which I think he'll probably be pretty well suited for.
I have to, you look at Reina's club perform, like the raw number of minutes he's playing. He's only played like 600 minutes so far this season, and I have to look at how many games Dortmund's played, but it's almost half. And you go and you look at last year, and it's even less in whole full season. The guy's just not played that much, and I don't think he's a 90-minute guy when he is with Dortmund right now, just because he doesn't have that health. A little bit of paper skin, glass bones there. I have to wonder, he's 20. I just turned 20. I'm wondering if Berhalter's looking at it and saying, you know what, this guy's not been consistently fit for the last year and a half. Manage his minutes. Let's see what he can do. But the team's not really used to playing with him as it is. Just let him get some experience, I guess. He's also got a little bit of the hothead on the team, so maybe it's not suiting him very much. But I have to wonder if it's really just that he doesn't really trust those ankles of his.
I do like that he at least brought on Sargent to sort of give him a little bit of a push at that substitution window, so that he's not dependent on being the only one to have the fresh set of legs up front. At the same time, though, once again, where's Ferreira? Why isn't he playing in this game? I think when we were talking about the England game, the suggestion was to start Ferreira. I'm wondering, where is that confidence that we had in him?
I'm kind of wondering if this is Greg getting a little cold feet after looking at just how the previous World Cups were so set piece dominant. It's been really odd. Set pieces, I think, this World Cup have been under 30%, and last time they were like 45% of all goals. But you look at Wales, you look at England. Those are teams that really want to get a corner or a free kick against you, and that's just not where Ferreira's suited. I wonder if that's what's just been going on. That is where we had the very end, the flurry of 2 or 3 set pieces for England, where they got some of their only chances actually in the second half. I wonder if maybe that's why.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit more concerned about our own set piece play if it wasn't for the defense sort of stepping up and snuffing out England's set piece play. I think after this game, a 0-0 draw, and seeing a team that had 6 goals snuffed out, I think this defense has played some of its best and most solid work that I've seen on a U.S. team in a long time. That being said, if the offense doesn't score and justify that defense clean sheet meaning something, then you're always going to be seen as a lesser than average defense, and that's simply not true. That being said, a 0-0 draw is where we are at, and the 1-1 draw beforehand doesn't help either. So if we paint this picture, this means that the U.S. have to win. And I combed through the World Cup, and the teams that have drawn their first 2 games actually about 50% chance of winning their third game and qualifying. And there would have been a limited chance if they had drawn these 2 and some of the other results meant that a third draw would send them through, but this time they have to win. So let's go right to talking about Iran. As soon as I just cover our sponsor for the second half of our little podcast here, we're talking about Suero X. Once again, they're on the shelves and online. You head over to Amazon.com, go over to Jungle Gyms, go online to suerox.us, subscribe, save on them, their supplies there. You'll be able to replenish your lethargicness, your sick leave with 8 main ions and electrolytes. It's win-win. So go online for suerox.us and get your supply. So yeah, let's talk about this upcoming game. Let's go to US versus Iran. And I'm saying it right, Iran. If you were following things earlier today, there's a little bit of maybe one-upsmanship. The U.S. Not showing the complete Iran flag a few days ago, and now Iran's press sort of getting underneath, trying to get under the skin of Berhalter and Adams. So this is sort of turning into a who can needle one side worse than the other before this game starts. But that being said, it's still a game to play. I mean, the general thoughts are, Iran played a very solid game against Wales. I don't know if any of you were able to sort of catch that game.
I just caught bits and pieces of it. It was sporadic.
Just the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just the end, because in the 80th minute, Wayne Hennessy was sent off with a straight red. And that really opened up the dam there. The two goals that Iran scored were late in the game, late in stoppage time. So as much as I want to say this was a 2-0 win, how intimidating was the win? Do you feel it was a win for Iran, or was it a loss by Wales?
I think from what I saw, it looked like Wales had just burned out at that point. And then the red obviously did not help. But Iran wasn't very creative on any of their chances. I know that I think they were struggling with nerves on some of their opportunities, which I think they have one of the more veteran groups in this World Cup. So that was pretty interesting. But that's about all I could catch from it. They didn't pop off the page. They were a team that was just playing, kind of trying to get it rhythm, but also going after it.
My impression was that Iran were a little bit more proactive than Wales were, where Wales weren't really cohesive, is my impression. And I just want to say, I think the way that the U.S. really pushed them had something to do with that. Just like we saw how just gutted the Wales team looked at the end of the U.S. game, kind of feel like maybe that had something to do 3 days later not playing super great against Iran.
Yeah, and Iran too are a side that, they're a Carlos Queiroz side through and through. They will sit in and defend resolutely and look for their chances. And there's a reason why they made it to the 80th minute without any goals in that match. And the England match is a bit of an anomaly for them. They're not usually a side that are giving up, bucket loads of goals. And I fully expect that they came out with that match a little bit with their pride on the line, saying like, hey, we're not going to be in a situation where we're going to get embarrassed again. And they really tightened things up. And I think they'll carry a lot from that result, whether it was Wales shooting themselves in the foot more or them actually performing. That won't much matter to them. I think they'll come out of that match saying, look, we have an actual chance to qualify here, and all we have to do is kick the bucket today. And I think they'll definitely believe in themselves, and that matters as much as their ability to do it.
They definitely seem to come out sort of in the same way that Costa Rica came out against Japan. Costa Rica getting wiped out 7-0 by Spain, and then just telling themselves, this isn't who we are. This isn't the type of game we play. And then coming out and being very strategic against Japan and pulling out a big win when they needed it. But this is, like you say, this is a deceptive Iran team. I mean, the first half against Wales, they possessed Wales possessed the ball a little bit more. But once the second half started, You could tell that they wanted it more. They hit the woodwork real early in the second half twice, and 5 total shots in the first half, and then 16 in the second. So that doesn't spell a good thing against this U.S. team, where they tend to come out early in the first half, and then they don't make their substitution patterns as solid in the second half. But I mean, that's my sort of observation from this team. So I guess in terms of with the U.S., they have all hands on deck. They don't have to worry about anybody that's had to sit. I think Iran's got one player who came off the bench late, got his yellow card, and he's got 2 in 2 games. He won't be factoring into it, but he's more of a substitution pattern. So who do we see? Who would you like to see Berhalter start in this game?
Well, I will note, I think their goalkeeper's still out. Just he had that really nasty injury in the first game, right?
He broke his nose.
Yeah, I think got a concussion as well.
We'll take a look here. Actually, yes. That's right. Yeah, I for some reason I thought that he would play the second game, but yeah, he's still out. With that being said, the guy still had a clean sheet as the backup goalkeeper. I mean, yeah, you can say that, but if that's the case, then they would have lost against Wales.
I would say I think the U.S. has a little bit of a tricky situation because Iran is going to be fired up about this game. Playing Iran doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel like it means all that much for the U.S., but it's going to mean everything for Iran. I think it's going to mean a lot more just because of that flag thing, just because the United States, frankly, played a part in kind of the build up to the revolution and, what that part symbolized and everything. So this is like the game Iran cares about, where the U.S. really cared about the England game, and I guess Wales really cares about the England game as well. So Iran's going to be really fired up. At the same time, they only need a draw. So I don't know how much. Well, a draw probably. They might need a win if Wales really, if Wales scores just the right amount of goals for England and Wales to progress over Iran. But Iran needs a draw probably. They're going to have the energy for going behind them to go for a win. So it's going to be, I think, hard to tell which way Iran's going to actually come out. Their coach is going to favor being defensive, but I think it could go either way.
Yeah, I hope that they get caught between 2 games. I hope people are playing out of position. They're not covering some of our counters effectively. But yeah, I agree with that. I think there's going to be a lot of passion. I think they're going to bring a lot of energy into this match, but I just think they lack the quality in the end. I think the United States is a better team. I think they were a better team than Wales. That's why we were disappointed with that result. I think the United States now has 2 games now under their belt with pretty much the same lineup. So I think U.S. Shows up to the plate for this one.
Yeah, and I'll echo that too. I think the one thing that I'm intrigued to see is if Berhalter does switch away from this familiar 11 that he's more or less stuck with, minus the up top change. And I'm really not to be cliche and get on the boo boy train about getting Reyna into the match, but I think this is probably the match for him. Iran are going to sit in. That's what they do. And, Weah is more of a speed, catch him off guard, counter-centered player. Reyna is a little bit more of a tricky operator has the ability to unlock a defense that sits in a little bit more. And you're going to need someone who's a little bit more clever in this type of situation, who's going to be able to break down a defense that doesn't necessarily want to come out of its own box. And if there's a time to really, scream into the Twitterverse and, maybe influence Greg's decisions, do it this, tonight, maybe into tomorrow morning, do whatever you can, because I think this is the match where we would really get the most use out of Reyna in the starting 11.
So would you start Reyna, or would you bring him in a little bit earlier than where was brought in?
I've been a big advocate of Greg making halftime switches, and I think this is the perfect scenario for that. give Reina the opening 45 minutes. Don't, if it works out great, then pull him off at halftime and make a switch that can be a little bit more protective of those weak legs that he seems to carry everywhere with him. And hopefully we end up in a situation where we can use him again in the later rounds a little bit more strategically. But yeah, I'd give him the start. And if everything goes to plan, or even if things are a bit chaotic, yank him off at halftime and go a different direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Make sure that he's the starter in that scenario rather than bringing him on with that energy and he just doesn't have it. So I'd like to see him in the first half if we do put him in the starting lineup.
I'd mention that I think this is also the game that really suits Jesus Ferreira. Playing, if you're gonna have possession of the ball, play the striker who's good at possessing the ball. The nice thing with Ferreira, he drops into midfield, and if anyone follows him, there's space. Hopefully Pulisic takes that up and can attack. Ideally, if you're playing Reina, Pulisic is the one who takes up Weah's kind of darting runs in towards the center of the opposing goal. So, if that works, here's hoping. That makes sense to me.
Would you stay with? I think the midfield is probably going to stay the same. MMA. I don't think you fiddle with that at all. Would you stick with your don't fix it? Defense. In terms of maybe your wingers, do you change that up a little bit? The defensive wingers. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that.
Yeah, I'm going to say surprisingly no for this matchup. I think this matchup sort of suits a little bit better because we're going to be playing so many numbers up high to try to crack that defense. That we need the quality players that can play defensively. So I think it's good to not switch up. I mean, obviously you're not going to switch up Jedi, but I think Des is a good man for the job.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer of stick with your concrete defense if you can. And defending is every bit as much as the skill of the players as it is the relationship that's built between them. And honestly, right now, I feel like this back four can kind of understand where the other people are without necessarily looking. And I think that matters in tremendous ways, especially in matches where it's do or die.
In my head, I'm just remembering the last time Reina and Cannon played, I think, where just Reina just completely ignores Cannon again and again and again. So, what's the point of having Scally or Moore or Yedlin overlap if Reina's not going to find him? So for me, I think go with Dest. He come inside and play, combines well. I'd go for it. Dest has played well. I don't see any reason why to take him out, barring health.
And I also think that over the past game, with Adams popping back into the back, it almost feels like the back four is, while it's strong, it's impenetrable with Adams working his magic back there. I think we saw it today in particular with the questions that were addressed to him and Berhalter by the Iran media and in general, the questions that really weren't soccer related. That poise, I think, really tells me that he's ready to break out, that this is the game where if he wasn't a household name, he's definitely going to be on many, I think, roster suggestions, like any transfer rumors. You're going to see him definitely brought up a lot more. I found it very interesting today. He sounded very studious, very unwavering when the questions came to him. And in my opinion, I feel that all of that bulletin board material that was given to Iran was erased. That if they thought they can get under the skin of players by throwing it back in their face, it's not going to work.
Well, and as we've heard too, I don't, how much are the Iranian players really involved in all of this, right? And, I wouldn't doubt, the question was posed towards the U.S. men's national team, staff, whether it was Berhalter or the players, what do you guys have to say about the flag? Well, clearly none of them made the social media posts. None of them did the graphic design work. They weren't behind that. But the players have been very vocal in the fact that they're backing the Iranian movement that's happening at the moment. And, the federation has kind of made it a point over the last year or so to be a little bit more politically proactive than they have in the past. Whether you believe those things are political or not, plenty of people do. And while I don't necessarily have a problem with it, what I think is, being seen as is, well, the players aren't doing that. Well, there is a coaching decision in that. You can't make these types of choices at the World Cup and not run those kind of things by the coaching staff. The coaching staff do have a little bit of a say over those types of things, whether you would want it to happen or not. So there was a conscious choice from the national team, from the technical side, to say, we're behind you guys making some choices that are along these lines. Whether they knew the flag was going to be changed or not, I don't know. But the Iranian players, it's come out that they're facing, potential death threats from their own government over any potential protest that they make, particularly in this match. So there's a lot of pieces that are going on outside of the machinations of the world of football that are going to be impacting this. And I'm just really curious to know how much of all this was politically motivated. And, obviously the reporters who are doing that are probably state media guys in some respects, but there's just a lot going on here that is filtering outside of the world of football and into the world of football. And it's just a really weird set of mechanics.
To piggyback off of that, I think there's a player in Iran, so not part of the national team, but formerly was part of the national team, who was actually arrested. Saw that, I think, on NPR. And it just makes me think of what happened with Colombia in, I think, what was that, 94 maybe?
It was.
Yeah.
His last name was Escobar. What was his first name?
Depends on which Escobar you're talking about, because there's two of
them.
Yeah. So Pablo Escobar was the Colombian dictator, drug lord, obviously, that was running and financing the team at the time. But then there was Andres Escobar, who is the starling center back who had just signed for Real Madrid right before the tournament. Colombia were literally the number 4 ranked team in the world and seen as one of the potential favorites. They were supposed to host the 90 World Cup, and everything kind of fell to pieces on them. So, the 86 World Cup. So there's just, sorry to take over your story there, Adnan.
No, you're getting it. But the same thing at that time, where you were hearing players were being threatened, where their families would be kidnapped or otherwise, maybe they'd be killed. Andres Escobar was killed after this happened a few weeks later. And from my understanding, it's not exactly clear what happened, where he was shot, I think, at a bar or something. I wasn't sure if it was retaliation or not, but you have to wonder, how much, what is going on with the Iranian players that way. It's not a position I envy for them.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we talk about bulletin board material and who's got the advantage from a psychological point of view, the Iranian team's going to have a lot on their mind. But I think both teams are going to be feeling some pressure in this game. It's just going to depend on, if the U.S. wants it that much more, to be cliche about it. Just to maybe bring this all together, what is your prediction for this game? This is it. If they don't win this, it's done.
Well, I'll start first since my prediction was so bad last time. I'm going 3-1. I think the U.S. I think Iran scores probably. I think U.S. gets the first 2 goals, and Iran tries to bring it back with U.S. just playing good form, good chemistry. They've had a couple of weeks now together. This should be the game they open up.
I'm going to be only just slightly conservative on that. 2-1 for the U.S. I think this is I think Iran doesn't quite have the same talent as the U.S. And I think that England game was a little bit of a blip in terms of how bad they were. But I think we clearly saw that Iran was not up to the level of England, whereas I think the U.S. kind of were. And hopefully that I think that'll carry through.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and go with the 2-1 as well. Not necessarily because I feel like, it's going to be that close of a match, but I feel like it's going to end up being that close of a match. We just don't have a habit of closing things out, and I feel like it's going to be a nervy one. And I do kind of expect that we'll jump up by a couple, and then we'll give one up, and then it's going to be a wild ride until that final whistle.
Yeah, I see a lot of parallels from 2010 when the US needed a win to get into the next round, and they got that late one from Landon Donovan. But I don't see this team operating that way where they're able to reverse the field and get this late strike. I do see them winning this game, but I do think it's going to be a nail biter. I see a 1-0 game where everybody's going to be walking on eggshells in the second half, and somehow they're able to pull it through. Don't know who scores it, don't know how they score it, but I think it's going to be a 1-0 win for the US. And by all means, if you guys have any opinions on this, let us know in the comments. Let us know on social media, and we'll be able to let you guys know our opinions about it. And we value your opinions, of course, because you guys mostly support us. We get sponsors, but the legwork is done by you guys. We always want to thank you about that. So a quick shout out to everybody: Ree Lee, John Davidson, Mike Hudson, Robert Stevens, Laura Failer, Matthew Adamchick, Riley Stephen Burke, James Denbow, Tom Niehaus, Brian Weigel, Brian Giles, Dan Albers, Will Kychek, Ian Rexroad, Augustus Caceres, Carl Feit, Kyle Pohl, Christina Sharma, Rupesh, Tom Beversdorf, Jason, who's super average, John Haskell, Ryan Ernest, Mary Lou, Wes Anastasi, Rob Pierce, Clifford Adams, Thomas Spaeth, and Pierce Johnson, Mike Prentice, Mr. and Mrs. Wiederhold, Rob Grassel, Brian Brum, sorry, I can't believe I messed up his name, Bradley Weigel, Kevin Day, Jamie Schmed, Alex Carnegas, Mike Bowman, Patrick Laney, David Tengler, Brett Sova, Chris Hubbard, Kevin Cooney, Joe Max, Jack Emery, Sarah Gorman, David Moore, Bob Ryan, Ryan Durkin, Bart Lebeda, Robert Triple, Joe Lure, Bill Leopold, Maureen Dave Moray, Jose Guerra, Paul Hoker, David Myers, John Cafardi, and everybody listening right now. Thank you very much for all that you help us with. So let's quickly wrap up where we are right now. All teams have played 2 games so far. Just a handful of teams have been knocked out. Believe it or not, Canada being one of those teams. Two tough results for them, but they are out. I guess the big question is, how are we able to grade Canada on this performance, or should they be just thankful to be there?
I don't think we can grade them. I mean, we're not quite sure what kind of form Croatia's in, and obviously Belgium's one of the top teams in the world. So I think it was a rough group for them. You would have liked to see them have a little bit more quality. Very impressed with their first half against Belgium, but I wouldn't rag it on them.
I disagree a little. I wouldn't rag on them. I think they kind of got a hard draw where, if they had maybe Morocco earlier, just in their schedule, they might have been able to go into the third game and kind of go and fight for it a little bit. But you go and you look at how they played against Croatia, where they really came out and took Croatia on, but like their midfield, Stakio, Atiba Hutchinson, just dead on their feet. And you got to wonder, like, why did you do that? You really took everything out and, used up all your energy against Belgium, and you're playing a bunch of 30 somethings. How old is Atiba Hutchinson? Like 37?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Kudos for the guy to finally get Canada to the World Cup, but he needs a break. So I feel like Canada, Herdman overthought this. I think he learned the wrong lesson against Belgium, where this was a game to sit back, let Croatia control the ball, and really sucker punch them, and they didn't. And lopsided result. I think it's a bit unfair. The result's a little unfair to Canada, but they weren't in it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think part of it is also, we're talking about bulletin board material, and he gave it to Croatia, Herdman, the head coach. And unfortunately, some of those people, that's what happens. They got the first goal, and I think that might have just triggered something Croatia saying, we're not going to be embarrassed by this team right now. And as much confidence as Canada played with, there's just something about the Croatian team that snapped, and putting forward on the on the Canadian team, that's still a powerful team. The other team that is out, Qatar. I don't think we have much more to say about them. They could have some some sort of voice in terms of who makes it out of Group A. But the three teams that made it so far, you have France, you have Portugal, you have Brazil. I think we expected all three of those teams to get in, but it's going to be interesting to see what some of these other groups look like. Maybe just to close out here, are there any groups that you have vested interest in now that we're down to one game left?
I gotta say, I'm super excited to see what happens with that one group with Germany, Spain, Japan, and Costa Rica. Germany's sitting at last with I think 1 point, and Spain's at 4. So you've got Japan and Costa Rica sitting at 3, and anyone could go through. That seems kind of wild to me. Love that little chaos.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful to have that. Yeah. DJ, Justin, what do you guys, what is the marquee group that's left for you guys?
I mean, I'm hard pressed to argue for any group other than that very clear group of death. I'm more looking to see if Brazil can actually continue to impress the way they are without Neymar. So much is made about him and his impact within the Brazilian setup. And I think they're actually a far superior side without him in it. And they've gotten this little run of play without him. And they weren't necessarily quite as sharp today as they were last time out. And obviously Neymar did appear in that match, but he's not going to be in the last group match. And I would be very intrigued to see if they do well in that one, how, hard pressed they'll feel to bring him back into the setup if they feel like they've got a good team going ahead into the knockout round.
Yeah, that was sort of a confusing day for Brazil, but at the same time, they had a goal that was ruled out because Richarlison just, I guess, lingered a little bit offside. But still, a very, I think, very impressive win, even though it wasn't some sort of blowout. Switzerland is still a good squad. Justin, who do you have in terms of like a group that you're still vested in? Let's get you off mute. Hold on. There you go.
Sorry, the mute was, yeah. I'm still invested in Group H. I mean, I'm super interested to see who's going to go through. I have Portugal secured the top spot, but Ghana's sitting on 3 points. South Korea with 1, playing a Portugal that may be resting. And then Uruguay versus Ghana is going to be get your popcorn ready. That's going to be a fun matchup. And if Uruguay gets the 3 points in there, they go through. Depending on the result of Portugal, South Korea, but it's very interesting how that group's shaking out. One of those teams is going to have to go home.
I'm surprised people aren't bringing up Group C. I mean, Argentina they won against Mexico, but they're still not assured a spot. They'll be going up against a Poland team that also needs to stay atop of their group. And then who knows if Saudi Arabia and Mexico devour each other or not. I still think that there is a possibility that Group C is going to have some shock upset, whether it's Poland crashing out because they're unable to get to 6 points or 5 points even, or if it's Argentina, perish the thought, getting upset for the second time and going home without Messi having anything to show for it. So I'm still invested in that group, and I want to see how that turns out.
I will say it would be very nuts to see Mexico advance with just 1 goal scored.
What, 1 goal scored? They have 0 goals scored.
Oh, they got to score something to get through.
Yeah, I know that's true, but I mean,
I think they'll need differential to go through on that.
Crazier things have happened. I mean, I think what we saw with Saudi Arabia, we were expecting a little bit more of a performance after their upset of Argentina. And I think that's what we're seeing a lot in this tournament, that the upsets that have taken place does not necessarily mean that the team has it in them to win a second game. And that's going to be real, I think, mouthwatering coming up for these last single games. But yeah, that's where we are. We all were predicting a U.S. win, and we're hoping that there's a U.S. win. If U.S. win, there's a good chance that they'll be second place. And if that's the case, I think they would be playing on Saturday. But if they finish first, I think they play on Sunday. Do you guys see any shot of the U.S. making it to Sunday, or should we maybe circle Saturday and pencil?
I wouldn't.
Go
I
ahead
wouldn't.
and get some Sharpie out.
But that's where we are right now. The U.S. have to win. We have confidence they'll win, but stranger things have happened. I want to thank my panel for this. We'll definitely be back here next week, I would say, win or lose. And we'll try to preview as much of what's left in the World Cup. We still have a few more weeks until the final, but we're through into December. Let's see how this feels for the first time. For Justin, for Adnan, for DJ, thanks for joining us tonight for this special edition of CST World Cup edition. My name is Jeff Tebbets, and once again, as the good Nick Subling always would say, watch your tackles. Thank you very much, guys.